Today's conversation is for anyone who's ever thought, I know my work is good, so why does it feel like no one sees it, no one notices it?
Visibility is vastly misunderstood. There are so many tactics, and there's not enough conversation about infrastructure. I think of marketing as the story that you tell the world about yourself, and PR is the story that others tell the world about you.
It's one thing that you need to do, and once you do it, everything's gonna, like, all the floodgates are gonna open, which would be great if that did happen, but more than likely, it's not.
The Tastemaker Matrix is designed, it's a quiz that's designed on 4 main variables. It's what is the core authority of your brand? What is your visibility purpose? Why are you doing this? Why are you being visible? The third variable is decision autonomy. And then the fourth variable is your resource capabilities.
Give us an example of maybe a client who can use this matrix, and what does that look like?
How are you showing up? How is your brand showing up? What are you doing in your day-to-day, week-to-week, quarter-to-quarter that allows other folks to hear your story and to know about you? There are aspects to the relationship building that can be outsourced, right? For example, if I want to start connecting with other startup founders, and I know that the startup founders that I may want to connect with are mission-driven, and they might be in accelerators or incubator programs for mission-driven founders, I might start by having my assistant research those accelerator and incubator programs and help me narrow down who I might want to make those connections with.
What's up, dreamers and doers, and welcome to the Dope Living Podcast. I am your host, Janay. This is a conversation platform for ambitious people rewriting the rules of success in a modern world. Today's conversation is for anyone who's ever thought, I know my work is good, so why does it feel like no one sees it, no one notices it? If you're tired of posting into the void, waiting for referrals, or hoping one day people will discover your genius, this episode is for you. My guest is Candice Smith, founder of French Press Communications and creator of the Tastemaker Matrix, an ROI-driven framework that helps mission-driven leaders build visibility systems that actually move the needle. She's on a mission to help thoughtful experts stop hiding behind their work, and start showing up as the obvious choice. Candice, welcome to Dope Living.
Thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here today.
And I'm really excited for this conversation. Just before we got started, we were talking about the fact that a lot of people in our generation, which is this millennial generation, we're almost like the founders of social media. We're the test dummies. Social media changed into this creator world, creator marketplace. Even the job finding and the job hunting framework has changed. Everything has changed. And a lot of it is about visibility, putting yourself out there, changing the way that you find clients, the way that you find, employers, changing the way that you find like supporters and, let's say, likes and engagement, things like that. Mm-hmm. So we're really going to dive into why this conversation matters. So for the person who just clicked on this particular episode, I'm doing all the things that I'm supposed to do. I'm doing content, I'm networking, I'm trying to get my PR push together, but my visibility still doesn't seem to match the quality of my work, which is a big thing. Why do you think it's important that people stick around for this particular topic and conversation, Candice?
Yeah, I think that visibility is vastly misunderstood. There are so many tactics, and there's not enough conversation about infrastructure. There are so many different ways and strategies and things that people can do, and it can be very overwhelming, as well as feeling like you have to be everywhere and showing up in all of the places at once, right? I think that when you have a strategy that actually aligns more with your goals and your personality, you can show up more authentically as yourself and actually have results that align with the effort that you're putting in. I work with a lot of folks, leaders, founders, etc., that are constantly feeling like they're running the hamster wheel and they don't know why they're spending so much time. They're getting burnt out by being expected and putting these expectations on themselves to show up in all of these different ways.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they're not getting the return. And it doesn't feel sustainable and they don't know what to do. And so very often folks disconnect, right? When there are strategies and there are options, and visibility can look different for everybody.
That's interesting. So you already work with mission-driven leaders, people who care about their impact and not necessarily optics, which I think is a huge segment or a subsection of our audience. What do they usually get wrong about visibility before they see you, for example? Like, are they undersharing? They're saying the wrong things, or are they measuring things wrong? What's actually going wrong?
Yeah, so to get started, I like to pull back a little bit and talk about definitions for a second. It's really important for us to get aligned on what we mean when we say particular words. So for me, marketing, super simple. You're not going to find this definition in a textbook, but I think of marketing as the story that you tell the world about yourself, and PR is the story that others tell the world about you, right? And visibility is the structure, it is the strategy that determines whether or not those things work, right? You need to have both marketing and PR in order to have a solid visibility strategy. You can't just have one or the other. So,
Interesting.
because these things are integrated, when folks are getting started with marketing, PR, visibility, they very often have their heart set on being in some feature or getting a certain number of followers. They have some sort of goal in their mind, and they're not necessarily thinking about what does it actually take to get to my goal, right? What kind of audience do I want to be attracting? What kind of relationship do I want to have with my audience? How do I want to show up? And what are the ways in which I'm committed to consistently showing up in that way, right? Okay. There are so many more layers to it, but a big piece of that puzzle is really understanding there's more to visibility. It's got to be a system. It can't just be pursuing one particular aspect and thinking that that's going to get you somewhere, right? For example, one of the biggest mistakes I see with founders that are pursuing PR is they will say, I need to get into Forbes, or I need to get into insert title here. But what they're not doing is thinking, what do I do when I get into that publication? Is that actually going to move the needle for me? What are some of the other relationships that I need to be building in order to get into that publication? What is the story that I'm telling? What kind of value do I have to offer? And let's say this publication goes gangbusters. Do I actually have the funnel that I need to bring in all this new business? Am I ready for that kind of visibility? These are a lot of questions that folks don't think about, and they're just like, I need to get into here, and that's suddenly going to validate everything that I'm doing.
And what you're talking about is it's something that I've experienced, and I think it's something we don't talk about enough. This idea that it's like where it's one thing that you need to do, and once you do it, everything's gonna, like, all the floodgates are gonna open, which would be great if that did happen, but more than likely it's not. It's just that's not how it works, right? And can you I mean, I don't want to like preempt it, right? In my mind, I would say it's consistency, but that's me talking about, those like actions that you have to do. It's just not one goal you're trying to get to. What does that comprise of? Like, what to you is like, how do you change the mind of someone that's saying, okay, no, you just have to get the reporter to write about this thing one time and we'll be done with it? Like, how do you
Yeah,
advise in that regard?
absolutely. So when it comes to media features in particular, um, you know, the media landscape has shifted so drastically. Even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, a couple of years ago, perhaps getting a large feature that's like the perfect feature article that you wanted. It hits all the main points. It has the CTA. It links back to the work that you're doing. And it has someone that's saying, this is incredible, right? You have to work with this person. You have to invest in this product, download this app, buy this book, what have you. That is one feature. And there's a lot of noise out there. And especially with the advent of AI, that content, we are just being inundated. The outlets are being inundated with content, and there's no guarantee, one, that anyone's going to, or that anyone in your ideal audience is going to see that feature. You have to be prepared to share it out. There's no guarantee that that feature is going to have a massive staying power and make it to the front page and be shared in newsletters, etc. You have to be prepared that that piece gets published and then it goes into the ether, right? It's still there, obviously, right? It's great for your SEO, your AIEO, and all of the other parts of your digital footprint.
I like that AIEO.
AEO, AIEO. Starts to sound like a children's nursery rhyme. But, those individual features, they don't make your entire PR strategy, and they don't make your entire visibility strategy either, right? So you really have to think about, what are the relationships that I'm building, right? If we go back to the definition that PR is the story that others tell the world about you, that's a key component of that. Others are telling the world about you. How are you building out those champions? And what are you doing beyond the earned media placements that actually get people excited to talk about you, that have them become a part of your audience, that actually become champions of your brand and are ambassadors for you and for the work that you're doing?
And let's talk about that. How, I guess, and I don't want to get ahead of myself because I have a whole like list of questions, and to be
Yeah.
honest with you, I don't know how you do it, right? Because you're dealing with a lot of people that come to you and say, "This is what I want, get me there now," right? And you're supposed to jump into a magic bullet and make it happen, right? But you created something called the Tastemaker Matrix. So I'm going to jump into that first before I start kind of preempting everything. But and it sounds really chic and very mathematical, so I'm happy to break this down. So for someone who's never heard of it, what is it and what problem does it solve?
The Tastemaker Matrix is designed, it's a quiz that's designed on 4 main variables to help a leader understand what their visibility strategy should be based on where they're at right now, right? This
Okay.
can evolve and change. Everybody has phases and chapters of their career, aspects of their brand that are relevant one month or one quarter may not be as relevant the next quarter, right? So these modes that we enter in our professional lives can shift and change. But the Tastemaker Matrix is designed to help you understand what kind of resources you have. And I'll explain the 4 variables. It's what is the core authority of your brand, right? Who or what does your audience need to trust in order to want to get to know you, to follow you, right? Is it you as a spokesperson, the personality? Is it more behind the scenes, they need to trust the product or the service, right? What is that core authority? What is your visibility purpose? Why are you doing this? Why are you being visible? Are you trying to launch something from the get-go? And that could mean you're rebranding, even if you currently exist, right? Or you could be launching something totally new. Or are you scaling? Are you optimizing, right? Are you trying to build on something that already exists? The third variable is decision autonomy, right? This could be high autonomy, might mean that you're a self-funded founder. You can make all the decisions. You don't have to answer to anybody. And a lower decision of autonomy might be you are a consultant answering to a client. You are a director of communications, right? And you have to answer to someone else. Or perhaps you're a founder and you have VCs that you have to answer to, right? You need to decide, where is your decision autonomy? How much power do you have to decide how you show up? And then the fourth variable is your resource capabilities, right? And that's a very broad category, but the way that we define it is, do you feel like you have expansive resources to accomplish what you need, or are you constrained, right? Do you have some sort of a lack or a restraint when it comes to budget, time, team, energy? What does that look like? So those four variables affect directly how you can show up and be visible. And it also affects what kind of strategy is going to help you be consistent, right? Because if you are strapped for time and you're strapped for team, you can't necessarily show up and be visible on LinkedIn Live every single day because you have other things to do, right? And you can't delegate that to somebody else because you're constrained in terms of team. So Tastemaker Matrix and figuring out those four variables first helps you figure out a strategy. So we give you that strategy and that mode, and from there, we give you tactics. You have to start with the structure before you dive into tactics.
So the tactics and the tactics of, because we were just talking about kind of getting those cheerleaders, those people that are going to really advocate for you. So does that fall within the tactics, or does that fall within the strategy?
Great question. So I'd say it's a little bit of both, because when you're sharing your story, you have to be telling the right story to the right person at the right time, right? That's always the formula that ensures that someone will be present to listen to you, right? The right story to the right person at the right time. And there are different ways to tell that story. So I like to call it AMORE. That's AMORE. So AMORE is actually an acronym for the 5 different categories that you can show up in. So A stands for authority. Authority could be podcast interviews, conference talks, workshops, thought leadership articles, right? Anywhere where you are being an authority. M is for marketing. So marketing visibility through paid ads, lead magnets, SEO content, funnels, landing pages for conversion. O is for owned media. That's the media that you own and control yourself. That's your website, your Substack or newsletter, LinkedIn, your social media, case studies, founder blogs, etc. R is for relationship building, and this is one that is very often not thought of as a visibility strategy or tactic, but founder dinners, networking, showing up in peer groups, engaging in online communities, strategic partnerships, right? Actually showing up and building relationships with other folks can have some of the highest return on our investment. Yet we don't always think about that as a visibility tactic. And the last one is what we think of as PR, earned media, media features, press coverage, local news appearances, national news.
Right. I like that. Personally, I struggle with the relationship building. I know about it, but my default has always been like to go after the let's say the marketing side, right? And so for someone who is kind of wobbling around on the Amore, right?
Yeah.
Like there's strengths and weaknesses within your Amore. Can you talk about like the composition, or how a, like give us an example of maybe a client who can use this matrix, and what does that look like realistically if they are, let's say, weak in building but very good with getting earned media, or how does that composition usually work?
Yeah, absolutely. So we usually start by having folks run what I call a visibility audit, right? So you're
Okay.
taking account of all the ways that you show up, right? How are you showing up? How is your brand showing up? What are you doing in your day to day, week to week, quarter to quarter, that allows other folks to hear your story and to know about you, right? Write all of those things down, brainstorm them, figure out what is actually returning your investment, right? What are things that you are doing that is actually working? And those tend to become the areas that you double down on. However, let's say you want to become stronger in relationship, and that's something that you feel like you're having trouble doing, maybe because you're at home working remotely, you're stuck behind your computer. Me, by the way, all the time.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Yeah, and you feel stuck. I just posted on LinkedIn about this a few weeks ago, just feeling stuck and invisible because I do so much connection behind a screen. And
Right.
the only living being that I have interaction with for hours in a day is my dog, you
Yeah.
know? And he thinks I'm nuts. I'm just talking to an inanimate object. So, it's difficult, or it can be difficult depending on how your day or your life is structured. But one of the things that I try to remember when it comes to, in the case of building relationships, is how can I get myself in a scenario, find events, find like-minded people, to just put myself out there, number one, right? And number two, when I'm there, instead of becoming a wallflower, which might be my inclination if I haven't done this in a while, I try to think, what is the value that I bring to people? So I would actually say, for example, you're doing a great job of building relationships in your Amore because you are having one-on-one intimate conversations with folks on your podcast,
Mhm.
right? And as a podcaster, one of the skills that you have to nurture and become good at is finding those elements in a conversation that make people tick and diving deeper into it, right? Getting the juice of the story. And that is something that you know how to do. And those skills can be translated, if you want them to, into in-person networking. But they
Yeah.
don't always be.
It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of work, right? I think every aspect requires your thought, like thinking whether you need to outsource or whether you have to do it. And
Yes.
unfortunately, relationship building is one of those things where you have to figure it out. Um, and if it's that we have to cover the full gamut of Amore, and that is a part of it. There's like strategies and tactics that we have to learn and figure out, and, that's one of the things that I've been working on through this podcast, because just like you, I've been behind a computer since COVID, literally. And this is almost like therapy. All right. And I think, but it's the way how you frame it. If this becomes like a burden to you, then it will always be a burden, but you have to kind of change your mindset and say, this is really an experience. This is an eye-opening experience. I'm going to learn from other people. I'm going to do new things. And so, yeah, I think definitely it's one of those things where if we have to cover it, you've got to think about like, what am I going to outsource and what do I need to work on? And we always have stuff to work on,
Yeah.
obviously.
And something I'll say, and pardon me, but something I'll say is there are aspects to the relationship building that can be outsourced, right? For example, if I want to start connecting with other startup founders, and I know that the startup founders that I may want to connect with are mission driven, and they might be in in accelerators or incubator programs for mission driven founders, I might start by having my assistant research those accelerator and incubator programs and help me narrow down who I might want to make those connections with.
Ah, okay. Okay. I really like that. So you're more intentional, more specific, and it doesn't feel like you're just kind of going to the wolves, throwing yourselves out to the wolves, because that's how it could feel sometimes. So I really like that. I really like that approach.
Yeah, and that's really where you get into the specific tactics behind all of the AMORE, the ways that you can show up and be visible. There are different ways in which to do that and make it sustainable for you, right? If you can outsource, if you can delegate some of the aspects, maybe you have someone, maybe you're writing your LinkedIn posts, but you have an assistant post it for you or schedule it for you, right? And take care of some of the aspects that feel heavy or weighty or slow you down.
Yeah.
Those are all tactics that you can use.
Yeah. And so a lot of people that are listening obviously might be a one person team or have like just one or two, and they hear framework and think that I don't have time for that. Um, what does the simplest bare minimum version of the taste matrix look like for someone with limited capacity?
Yeah. So the Tastemaker Matrix gives you an overall understanding of what you could be doing for your visibility. But then, based on your resource constraints, it actually helps you understand what are maybe your top two priorities to be focusing on right now, right? You can only devote so much time, energy, money to a particular strategy. You can't do it all, and you shouldn't try because you're going to burn out. So, what are the primary actions that you can take that you know will have some sort of a return for you?
Mm-hmm.
So, if I found that doing podcasts was my number one way of getting referrals, having people reach back out to me, and that was the main thing that has had a return on my investment, that's what I'll lean into. If I'm a social media, one of the primary avenues that I use to reach people visibly is through social media, I may take a look at what is my most engaged with content. What type of content is that, and what is driving people to engage and interact and follow up? I double down on that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So,
Yeah.
really being mindful about the ways that you're showing up, and even more importantly, how are people interacting with you when you show up?
Mm. So let's talk about the emotional side, because visibility isn't just strategy, it's nervous system and mindset too. What are the most
Yeah.
common fears or stories you see people like brilliant people holding on to or holding back on when it comes to showing up? Um, you know, I don't want to be salesy. I don't want, who
Mm-hmm.
am I to say this? The imposter syndrome, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ready yet.
Yeah. Um, Most of what I see and some of what you were just saying comes back to this feeling of I'm not enough, right? Who am I to be speaking up? There's so much noise out there already. What difference can I offer? How
Yeah.
special am I? Truly, right? Um, Enoughness is a huge, huge issue. It's something that I've dealt with. It's something that nearly every founder and leader that I've interacted with has dealt with in some capacity.
Right.
Um, and it shows up in many ways. A lot of times, enoughness stops us, or our fear of being enough stops us. It creates this desire for quote unquote perfection, which is not real. That's a myth. Perfection is an absolute myth. It's a standard that we set that's unattainable in our heads. It creates analysis paralysis, right? We have so many different ways that we could look at something and, oh gosh, I don't even know where to begin. So I guess I'm not going to say anything at all.
Yeah.
It creates comparisons, right? Looking at where other people are showing up and saying, oh, well, they're doing so much better than I am. Why am I not getting these types of features? Why am I not getting this type of engagement? Why am I not making these same types of sales? I know what I have is better, or do I? Is it better? Am I enough? Right? It all comes back to this same feeling.
Right.
So enoughness is absolutely huge. Another one is, am I ready? And not from a enoughness perspective, but this time I'm not sure I know what I'm doing yet. I don't know if I'm telling the right story to the right person at the right time. I don't know if I'm there yet from a logistical or a narrative perspective.
For sure. So if someone listening knows they're hiding, posting safe content, downplaying their expertise, playing small, what's the first inner shift they need to make to start showing up as a tastemaker in their space?
You know internally why you're doing this work. It's the thing that makes you tick. And if you have done any kind of, and I know this is a tricky word, this can be a contentious word, but sales, if you have done any kind of sales work, which by that I mean you have shown up and explained the value of what you do to someone, and they saw the value in what you offer and they want to invest in it somehow, right? If you have shown up and gotten someone to invest in the value that you're offering, you have something to share with the world, right? And so the easiest way to start showing up is to get yourself out of your head, not with any, meditation exercises or jumping up and down. All of those things are great, right? Change your physiology, do your box breathing. All of those things are fantastic. Practice your speaking points. But more than anything, understand who you're speaking to and what do they need to hear from you. If you can speak to that person, you will not feel self-conscious because you are providing that value to them.
It's interesting. We had just kind of had a very similar conversation when it was about the imposter syndrome and how if you can change your question to am I good enough, change it from am I good enough to does this help or does this add value for the person that I want this to add value for, it's a complete game changer.
Yeah.
And I know that you work with mission-driven leaders, and that often means that folks from historically excluded backgrounds, first-gen professionals, or people doing work that challenges the status quo. How does that identity layer show up in visibility work?
Oh, what a great question. It's going to be different for everyone. Some folks want to lean into aspects of their identity in their visibility strategy, and others don't want to have that take a front seat as much. But identity informs everything, right? It informs how we show up, whether or not we want to acknowledge it publicly or not. And so the work that I do with my clients is to figure out where do they feel comfortable showing up, right? Where do they feel comfortable connecting their personal identity with their professional presence or persona? And it doesn't always have to be a professional persona either. How does it show up in the brand that they have, right?
Yeah.
You don't always have to be forward facing as an individual in order to provide a product. Although I will say, if you are in a service-based industry or you are providing some sort of support for other underserved communities, there's going to need to be trust. You
Yeah.
have to build trust, and you often build trust by showing up as yourself. So a lot of that work in narrative construction is around authenticity.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I want to move to a segment I call From Random Exposure to Intentional Visibility Systems. And I want to talk about systems because I think we're talking about busy individuals. And one thing that, and it goes back to what I said previously, like the consistency. I think we kind of get momentum for a little bit and then we're back to doing what we do. So I want to talk about systems. People treat visibility like a lottery ticket. Once you go viral or land a big feature once, we hope that solves everything, which we spoke about. What's the difference between exposure and actually a system?
Great question. Exposure is a moment in time. A system is repeatable. It is sustainable. It's something that works with you because you have designed it to be a part of your life, your brand, your career, right? Exposure is not necessarily something that you can control. Virality is absolutely not something that you can control. You can orchestrate very, very carefully to try and help the algorithm push something to become viral, but there's no guarantee, right? And so that exposure, which is largely outside of your control and happens to you, is very different because it puts you in a reactive frame of mind versus a system, which is something that you control, you design, and it keeps you in a proactive state of mind.
So exposure is reactive, and the system is really a proactive way of gaining that visibility and really telling your story.
Exactly. And when you have a system and you get exposure, you are more prepared to react.
Nice. I really like that. Let's say someone listening wants to build a basic visibility system over the next 90 days. Can you break down that like a simple roadmap? Month 1, month 2, month 3.
Sure. Start with your visibility audit. See what you've been doing so far and identify, is that working for you? What's giving you the highest return on your investment? Let's say pick one thing, just one, right? Maybe you're doing 10 things. I want you to narrow it down to one. And starting with that one thing, ask yourself, how can you scale it up, right? How can you start doing more? If you're doing interviews, how can you secure more interviews? If you are attending events, how can you not only attend those events, but make sure that you're following up with everybody that you meet, right? Thinking through the aspects that you're already working on and that are working for you and doubling down on those. Now, the other piece I want you to think of is your growth area. Now, let's say we go back to this AMORE, right? And you're looking at all the different ways that you can be visible and you say, all right, I'm doing really well with authority. I'm showing up on podcasts. I'm going to double down on podcasts because it's working for me. However, I also want to start building up my relationships and going to networking events because I'm trying to raise funding, right? So that becomes your second priority. I'm going to focus on booking 3 events a quarter and working on my elevator pitch. I'm going to show up and network the heck out of every event I go to, try to meet all the VCs, connect with them on LinkedIn, and that becomes the strategy that you have. Make sure that you're keeping your goals simple and clear. Quantify as much as possible, right? Saying things like, I will double the number of podcasts that I'm trying to get on, right? Every quarter, I will post 4 times a week instead of 2 times a week, because I know that every time I post, I'm making sales, right? Make sure that whatever your strength strategy is going to be, that number one priority that's working for you, make sure that it's making you sales, traction, getting you more followers, right? It has to do something for you in order for you to double down on it. And then for the growth priority, that secondary priority, focus on how maybe you have to learn. There's a learning curve. Maybe there's applications or some sort of new education that either you need to do for yourself or that you need to educate your audience on, to test and see if this new avenue of visibility is working for you. Take that piece by piece, right? Make a goal for how you're going to either learn or execute or delegate week by week, and hold yourself to that. Give yourself some time, let's say maybe 3 months at least, to see if it starts bearing fruit. Because new visibility strategies are not going to necessarily take off immediately. There will always be a learning curve.
Yeah. I love that. So that's where you talk about visibility that is ROI driven. This is your ROI right there. What is it going to do for you? And in those cases where you don't see immediate traction, because I think that's another challenge that we see, that you do something and everyone wants it to just hit, or that it's supposed to do something and that's not necessarily the case. What metrics should a founder or an executive actually be tracking to know that their visibility is on the right track or starting on the right track and then working?
When it comes to visibility and tracking metrics, going back to AMORE, for example, there are very many different ways to show up and be visible, which also means that there are many different ways to track. So I always tell clients and other mentees that I work with to focus on the traction that comes out of it. It's not always as easily measurable. Like, let's say if you go to events don't always have a direct ROI if you're not going to make sales, right? But you might have gotten 10 business cards from it. And of those 10 business cards, you know that 4 of them are people that you're going to reach out to and are going to become a part of your professional network. And those folks can introduce you to clients that can help you bring in 5-6 figures.
Right.
That is a funnel that you can create and then measure to show, okay, every event I go to, I'm going to end up with at least 1 client. Right. And that client's going to be worth 5 figures, right? If you have a clear pipeline and understanding like that, that is so powerful. However, it's also not always that easy, right? So looking at the traction that you currently have, sometimes that could be in terms of looking at your Google Analytics if you do have a digital footprint, or looking at some of the other metrics on social media, what have you. Let's say you're making sales, or you're measuring how many people are signing up for your newsletter, right? A newsletter is a great way to have folks enter the start of your funnel, right?
Right.
That is the nurture sequence that will then get them to the conversion. So look at where those conversions are happening and plan backwards. How are they finding you? And when you figure out how they're finding you, can you figure out as well, what did you say or do? How did you show up in that moment that connected with them, that got them excited, that created what I like to call the light bulb moment, right? Where they were like, oh my gosh, you get me, right? I'm ready to invest. So working
and
backwards.
I guess that's where the combination comes through as well, because you talk about like getting them, right? Like you've got 10 business cards, but now you need to nurture, right? And then I think we stop at the 10 business cards and then we forget to nurture, or we forget kind of that next step, which all is it all contributes to the ROI that we're speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, again, going back to, it's not just one thing, but it's how well we design the full visibility, let's say, project, if we call it a project, or the visibility roadmap or plan that we have for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
How well are we intentioned, right? Because I think
Yes.
also we could be very like, we have to get visibility because other companies are getting visibility, other executives are getting visibility, and we think that's the way to go
Yeah.
versus being intention. I think that's where the audit comes in, and that's where understanding what gives you what's easier to do than something else, or what's like heavier to do, so you might not do that. And so your visibility, the way that you carry yourself from a visibility perspective, may look a lot different from someone else because it just becomes a little bit easier for them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, as you were saying that, you reminded me um, of a an example where a client of mine, and this has happened multiple times, but recently a client of mine showed me a a feature that a competitor had obtained, and said, you know, what am I doing wrong? Why haven't we gotten in there yet? And the answer is always so complex when you look at someone else's feature, let's say, or profile, or posts, or success, and you say, I do something so similar. How, why am I not getting the same exposure? Why am I not getting the same visibility? But what's being forgotten in those moments is the visibility journey behind the scenes. What has this person been doing in order to build their own relationships? Have, you know, and very often I'll take a look at and say, well, let me do a deep dive. Oh, well, hang on a minute. This person's actually been getting featured for 10 years, and it wasn't an overnight success like we thought,
Uh,
right? They
yeah.
didn't just get in New York Times overnight. They've actually been around for a while, and they've probably been hustling pretty hard,
Right.
right? And so the everybody's visibility journey and story is going to be different. And when you focus on building your network and your audience in a way that is most authentic to you, that is where you start to get the real conversions, right?
Mm, right.
Um, the more that you understand things like, you know, events are great for me because that's where I meet the change makers in my life and business, or I shouldn't be going to events because they take so much time, energy, and money, and I'm never going to follow up with these folks. I lost every business card that I collected.
Right.
Um, I should be focusing on something else, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's journey is going to be different, and you really have to be honest with yourself about what works for you.
Right. Right. Um, that one hit a chord for me, right? Because, I've definitely been in situations where people are, comparing themselves to someone else, right? And saying, well, we're not getting the feature here. And then all of a sudden it's your fault, or it's the person who's in charge of PR's fault, and not understanding the nuances that got them there, and how that could possibly take time, or some sort of,
Hmm.
intention for that, right? But I want to shift to advice for the quiet experts ready to be seen.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot of leaders up close. What patterns do you notice in people who effectively become tastemakers in their industry without losing themselves, or who are, like we said, behind the computer, or are really quiet?
Yeah. Um, the folks that have done the best job of showing up are able to build trust and build an audience of believers within their sphere of influence, right? You don't have to have 100,000 followers on LinkedIn or Instagram in order to be trusted as a resource and authority within your industry.
Mm.
If you show up and you do the work and you connect with the right people, that speaks for itself. And very often, the folks that you interact with start speaking for you, right? And that's where they start to become tastemakers in their own right.
Exactly. It hits a chord with me, right? Because I think that early part of social media becoming what it is today it was all about followers. It was always about kind of just building that. And somewhere, at least this generation got lost, or now they're confused. Like, do I need followers, or do I just need to do what I do?
Yeah.
And the truth is, again, it's not. I don't think it's a straightforward answer. It's a bit of both, but what's prevalent obviously is once you're true to yourself, right? And you're actually giving something of value. And is it now just a matter of, is the audience that really can benefit from that smaller?
Right.
Right? Just naturally smaller, right? Naturally more deep, or whatever it is that you're offering, if it's just there. Um, and then we see the things that do get a lot of followers, right? And I don't think I don't even think we're talking to a lot of those people, right? The people that do something that so many people can. I mean, I would love to dance. I can't dance, but I know I would have so many more followers if I knew how to choreograph a dance. Or, and I use that as an example because I really do want to learn how to choreograph a dance one day, but I know I'm not good at it. So, but it's just things to think about, right? When we start to question ourselves, why don't we have the followers, or why this or why that? And again, taking that step back and doing that audit.
Yeah.
And really just focusing on the right things,
Yeah. And I mean, what you said right there just reminded me, you can't build a powerful brand by borrowing somebody else's voice, right? And we live in an economy that is driven by attention these days, and attention is so fragmented. The media features or the massive platforms getting that immediate spotlight, that's not even necessarily going to do everything for you and create all the success in the world that you have hoped, right? What's more powerful is actually niching down, right? Getting precise about who you want to reach, because otherwise it is just noise, right? It's noise that people just, all right, next, and it just becomes a part of the void.
Right.
So, and there's a reason why a lot of trust has faded in the largest media companies in the world, and why you see so many journalists and authoritative voices going towards Substack podcasts, creating their own niche audiences of people that are really, really engaged, because they trust those folks and they don't trust large media outlets that are pay to play.
That's true. And I love to end with that. Candice, this has literally been so rich. And so it connects with me so much because I've been in this world, and sometimes I must say, my hat's off to you, because it can be very difficult as well. You've given us a completely different way to think about visibility, not just exposure, right? Which is the one-off, as we learned today.
Yes.
Before we close, I want to leave, and I always do this with every episode, leave with an affirmation around this, what we spoke about today. So I'm going to take a moment and just say that, our affirmation of the episode is that I'm not waiting to be discovered. I'm choosing to be seen. My voice, my story, my work deserve to be in rooms where decisions are made. Visibility is not ego, it's alignment between my impact and my presence. I build systems that showcase my value without betraying my values. I am a tastemaker in the making, and I am safe to take up space. And that's our affirmation of the episode. Candice, where can people find you, learn more about French press communications, and experience the Tastemaker Matrix, as I will after this?
Yes, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. You can engage with me on LinkedIn, Candice Smith, French Press PR. We're undergoing a rebrand right now, so hang tight for that with French Press Communications. But you can find us at www.frenchpresspr.com, where the Tastemaker Matrix will be live in January.
Yay, congratulations. I actually do have one last question for you. It is, when you think about your own journey, from educator to founder to framework creator, what are you most proud of in a way, in the way that you've built your own visibility?
I think for me, I'm most proud of listening to my gut. And in the moments when my path ahead and the journey ahead was not clear, I trusted myself to bring value to others and to follow that. And that has driven everything. Every decision that I've made, every way that I've showed up or not shown up, and how I've built French Press.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations, Candice. And dreamers and doers, you heard it here. We've spoken about everything, about what the internet has done to us since its inception, to how to now create visibility that matters, that's aligned with your values, that is true to you. And so I thank you, Candice, for this conversation. It means so much. And I will see all of you on the next side, on the next Dope Living episode. Thank you and be safe.